The sky over Winterfell was grey, like it always was in the north. Cold winds passed through the old stones of the castle, whispering secrets only the ravens could understand. Bran Stark sat quietly in the godswood, his eyes fixed on the ancient, a weirwood tree. He was still, silent, watching, but something was different now. Since becoming the three-eyed raven, Bran had seen many things. He had drifted through time, past and present, watching events like a ghost. But watching wasn't enough anymore. One night, when the wind howled louder than usual and the red leaves of the tree rustled like they were speaking, something strange happened. Bran felt a pull, not like before, when he just saw visions. This was deeper, stronger. He blinked, and suddenly he wasn't in the godswood anymore. He was standing at the edge of a battlefield, surrounded by soldiers wearing Stark sigils. Snow fell slowly. He turned his head and saw Robb Stark, alive, riding a horse, shouting commands. This wasn't a vision, this wasn't a memory. Bran was there, and then, just as fast, he blinked again, and he was back in Winterfell, in his wheelchair under the tree. He didn't say a word to anyone. Not to Sansa, not to Arya, not even to Sam. But that night he tested it again. He closed his eyes and thought of a moment, his fall from the tower. The day Jaime Lannister pushed him. He focused, he reached for it, and then he was there. Yep, the tower. Just a boy again, climbing stone walls, smiling, unaware of what was coming. But this time he saw Jaime before Jaime saw him. Bran froze, watching himself climb, watching Jaime and Cersei in the room. And before it could happen, before the push, Bran blinked again. Back. Godswood. Winterfell. He could control time. Not just see it. Not just visit it. He could step in. Be there. Even change it. The next morning he called for Samwell Tarly. If anyone could help him understand this, it was Sam. Sam listened with his eyes wide, then flipped through every old book he had brought from the Citadel. They read through tales of old green seers, old powers, old magic, but there was nothing like what Bran could do, and so Bran decided to test it. But not for small things. No, he had to try something that mattered. He thought of the Battle of the Bastards, the moment Jon Snow nearly died, when Ramsay Bolton almost won. Bran focused, closed his eyes. Suddenly he was in the snow-covered fields outside Winterfell. Soldiers screamed, swords clashed. Chaos. He saw Jon struggling to breathe beneath bodies, crushed under a mountain of men. Bran walked through them all like a ghost until he found Wun Wun, the giant. This time, Bran whispered to Wun Wun, spoke into his mind. "Move sooner, break the gates faster, save Jon." And the giant did. With a mighty roar, Wun Wun turned earlier than he had in the real battle. He smashed the Bolton lines, and Jon Snow clawed his way out of the pile, gasping, alive. Sooner, stronger. Bran returned. Sam was stunned. "You changed it. But that means the past can shift, the future too." Bran nodded. But they both knew. This was dangerous. One small change could ripple, could destroy something else. Still, Bran had one more test. He thought of the Red Wedding. He thought of his mother, Catelyn, of Robb, of Grey Wind, of the blood. He went back. He stood in the hall as music played, as laughter filled the room. He walked past guests who couldn't see him, moved through shadows. He saw Walder Frey at the high table, pretending to smile. And then Bran did something he'd never done before. He whispered into Lord Bolton's ear, "If you betray them, you die tonight." Rose flinched, looked around. Bran moved to the kitchens, whispered into a servant's ear, "Poison the wine. Not theirs. Frey's." He wove his way through the hall, leaving whispers behind, changing fate, thread by thread, and then blood. But not Stark blood this time. When the chaos began, the servants turned first. Poisoned wine, hidden blades. Bolton tried to stand, but a crossbow caught him in the chest. Frey guards dropped dead from their cups. Arya, in her timeline, had not yet come. But Bran didn't need her now. Catelyn survived. Robb, too. Grey wind tore through. The outer gates and wasn't caged. The Freys died in their own hall. Bran blinked. Back in the Godswood, sweating, shaking, but alive. The next day, Sam ran to him with panic in his eyes. "Bran," he said, holding up a scroll. "This arrived. It's from River Run. Catelyn Stark is alive. She's there. Robb's with her. They Frey betrayed Frey. No one knows what happened." Bran didn't speak, he just stared into the fire. Because he knew what came next. If he could save them, then he could do more. Maybe he could stop everything. Maybe he could stop the White Walkers before they even began. But some things weren't meant to be touched. Some parts of time were cursed, locked away for a reason. And soon, Bran would find out why. Word spread across Westeros like wildfire. Rumors about the Red Wedding failing, Robb Stark still alive, Catelyn Stark taking back River Run. No one could believe it. Lords who had bent the knee to the Lannisters started hesitating. The Freys had been wiped out in one night, their house burned from within, and nobody had answers. But Bran knew. He didn't tell anyone how or why. Sansa asked him directly one morning, her voice steady but eyes searching. "Did you see this coming? You've seen things before." Bran only nodded. They weren't meant to die. That was all he said. And Sansa didn't press further. In the quiet of the night, Bran returned to the Godswood again. He sat beneath the weirwood and closed his eyes. This time he thought of the very beginning, the first men, the children of the forest. The moment they created the Night King, he had to go further than ever before, and he did. Bran passed centuries in seconds. Forests untouched by men, rivers unmarked on any map. Then finally, he arrived. He stood at the edge of a strange glade. A man tied to a weirwood tree, surrounded by children of the forest. One of them held a dragon-glass dagger. Slowly, she pressed it into his chest. Bran stepped forward. "Stop," he said aloud. The children didn't hear him. They didn't see him. He was like mist to them. But the man being transformed, he looked at Bran, their eyes locked. One blue, the other brown, and something passed between them. Not words, something deeper, a connection. And then Bran was ripped backward, like a wave crashing, dragging him out of time. He opened his eyes in Winterfell, heart racing. The Night King had seen him. He hadn't just gone back in time. He had been seen. That night, a storm rolled over the north, harder than anything they'd seen in years. Lightning flashed, thunder, a cracked and something else. Cold that didn't belong to any season. Jon Snow returned to Winterfell a few days later. He brought news from the Wall. "The dead are moving again," Jon said, pacing in the hall. "The White Walkers have started pushing south. They attacked Eastwatch. Not just Whites, White Walkers, real ones." Sansa glanced at Bran. "We thought the magic held them off after the last war." Jon shook his head. "Something's changed. They're faster, stronger, smarter." And Bran stayed silent, because he knew why they were smarter. He had touched the past too deeply. He had been seen, but he wasn't done yet. Bran had another plan, one that could end the war before it even started. He would go back to the moment. The Wall was first built. He would strengthen the magic, reinforce the spells that protected the realm for centuries. He returned to the Godswood and reached further than ever. This time, he stood beside Bran the Builder. The wall was halfway done. Stone and ice stacked into the sky, giants working beside men. He whispered into Bran the Builder's ear. "Use dragonstone in the foundation, carve runes from old Valyria, trap their souls inside the wall." Bran the Builder blinked as if hearing a dream, and he listened. When Bran Stark returned to his time, Jon came to him with a look of confusion and awe. "The wall," Jon said. "It's different. The Night's Watch found old runes under the ice, dragonstone pieces. They were never there before. Bran had done it, changed history, strengthened the wall, given the realm more time. But it wasn't enough. The Night King was still moving, still remembering. A few days later, Bran sat alone again, thinking of one last change. A desperate one. He would go back to when Daenerys Targaryen reached King's Landing. He would try to stop her from burning the city. If he could fix that, he could stop the war, the destruction, the fear. He focused. He traveled. He stood on the walls of the Red Keep as bells rang and fire rained from the sky. He moved through the smoke and screams until he found her, Daenerys on Drogon, eyes burning with fury. He whispered over and over, "Stop! Don't do it! You're better than this!" But something strange happened. She turned, looked straight. At him, Daenerys couldn't see him, not truly, but something inside her shifted. Doubt, confusion. And Drogon hesitated. He hovered above the city, wings beating the air, fire choking in his throat. Bran watched, and then Drogon turned away. The fire never came. King's Landing was spared. Bran blinked back, and the world had shifted again. Jon Snow never killed Daenerys. The Unsullied stayed. Peace talks began. Tyrion wasn't imprisoned, but at the same time, something else broke. Arya came to Bran the next morning. "The Hound," she said. "He never made it to the battle. He died on the road. Cersei escaped. She's in Essos." Bran said nothing, because he understood now. Every time he changed something, something else broke. And the Night King, he was still coming. Now with more rage, because time itself was being twisted, and the fabric of the world could only bend so far before it shattered. Winterfell had never felt colder, not because of the snow or the wind, but because something unnatural was approaching. The ravens flew strangely now. The direwolves howled at nothing. The people in the north, tough as they were, began to whisper. They didn't know why, but they felt it. A shadow was coming. Bran knew exactly what it was. The Night King was moving faster than he ever had, as if he didn't need to gather an army this time, as if he already knew the future. And that's what scared Bran the most, because the Night King did know. He had seen Bran inside time, and now he was hunting him across past, present, and future. Jon called a meeting in the Great Hall. Everyone was there. Sansa, Arya, Sam, Tyrion, Davos. Even Robb Stark had arrived from River Run, alive and changed, not just by battle, but by confusion. His death had been erased, yet something inside him still remembered dying. "We've got reports," Jon said, looking at the map. "The dead are not moving like before. They're splitting up. One group took the Dreadfort. Another is headed for the Vale. But one is coming straight for Winterfell." He looked over at Bran. "We all know why." Tyrion leaned forward. "If the Night King is coming for Bran, then maybe we use that, lure him here, set a trap." "No," Arya said sharply. "That's not a trap. That's suicide. We've fought him once, barely survived." Robb folded his arms. "I don't even understand what's happening. The last thing I remember is being stabbed at the twins. Now I'm alive, the Freys are gone, and my mother's still breathing." Everyone turned to Bran. It was time. Bran spoke calmly, like his voice came from a place far away. "I've changed. Things," he said. "I've walked into the past and shifted events. Robb was never supposed to be alive, Catelyn either. I saved Jon from death at the Battle of the Bastards. I stopped Daenerys from burning King's Landing. I altered the wall. I whispered into kings and queens and builders." Silence. Tyrion blinked. "You... what?" Sansa stared. "You changed history?" Bran nodded. "Yes. But every change comes with a cost. Every life I saved broke another. And the Night King, he knows. He remembers all timelines now, all realities, because I crossed too many lines. Jon clenched his fists. So what do we do? Bran looked at him. We don't fight him here. We go back. Sam stepped forward, nervous. Back where? To the moment the Night King was created, Bran said. The root of it all. This time I don't just watch, I stop it. Sansa frowned. But you said you already tried. That the children of the forest didn't see you. Bran nodded again. They didn't, but the Night King did, because he was a man who can see me. If I reach him before the transformation, maybe I can stop it. Tyrion rubbed his face. And if you fail, then there's no returning, Bran said simply. But if I succeed, the Night King never exists. The White Walkers never rise. The wall never needs to be built. Thousands never die. Jon stood. Then I'm going with you. Bran shook his head. You can't. Only I can travel this way. I won't be in your time. I'll be in his. Arya stood up too. You're not doing this alone, Bran. I already have, he said. That night he went to the Godswood one final time. Snow fell in slow, lazy spirals, the weirwood branches covered in frost. Bran's hands touched the trunk, and he closed his eyes. This time he reached deeper than ever before. Past kings, past wars, past the age of heroes, he found the man. He was alone, walking through the forest, not yet tied to the tree, not yet cursed, a man of the first men, strong, brave, but desperate, lost. Bran stepped in front of him. The man stopped. Who are you? The man asked. I'm here to stop your death, Bran replied. The man raised a brow. I'm not dying. You're about to become something worse. And then Bran explained everything, not with riddles, not with mystery, plain words, clear truths. He told the man about the children of the forest, the dragon glass, the transformation, the cold, the dead, the endless war. At first the man didn't believe him, but Bran showed him. He took the man's hand, and together they walked. Through time, they saw the army of the dead, the fall of Hardhome, the battle at Winterfell, the bodies, the fear, the endless cold, and when it was done the man knelt on the forest floor and wept. I don't want to become that, he whispered. Then you must run, Bran said. Leave this forest, never return. And he did. The man vanished. The transformation never happened, and just like that, Bran felt everything begin to dissolve. The army of the dead faded, the wall flickered like a dream, battles unfought, names forgotten, wounds undone. Bran blinked one final time, and he was no longer in Winterfell. He was in a world he didn't recognize, a peaceful north, a quiet Winterfell, no scars, no White Walkers, but also no one remembered. Not Jon, not Arya, not Sam, not Sansa. To them, Bran was just their brother, a boy in a chair. Not a raven, not a time traveler, just Bran. And for the first time in a long time, he smiled. Because he had broken time to fix the world. Life in Winterfell had become simple again. Farmers tilled the frozen soil, blacksmiths worked in smoky forges, and children played in the courtyards like nothing had ever gone wrong. There were no whispers of dead men walking, no talk of dragons or mad queens. It was like Westeros had been wiped clean, a second chance, and Bran, he was just Bran again. He wasn't the three-eyed raven anymore. He didn't see flashes of the past or future. The tree didn't whisper to him. He still sat in his wheelchair, still watched the snow fall through the windows, but now he felt lighter, like the weight of 1,000 lifetimes had finally slipped off his shoulders. But peace never stays in the north for long. It started small. A raven arrived one morning, carrying a scroll from the citadel. Samwell Tarly, now Archmaester, had sent it. It was short, just a few lines. Strange signs in the stars, a ripple in time. Something has returned, come soon. Bran stared at it for a long time. He hadn't used his power since changing the past. He thought he couldn't anymore, but something in that message stirred something deep inside him, a tension, a crack. By sunset he asked Sansa for a horse cart and supplies. She was surprised. "Why the citadel?" she asked. "Sam says something's wrong," Bran replied. Sansa narrowed her eyes. "Is this about the magic again? You promised me that part was over." "I hoped it was," Bran said quietly. He left Winterfell with 2 guards and a healer. It took weeks to reach Old Town, but the journey was quiet. No sign of war, no bandits, just snow, frozen rivers, and peaceful towns. Everything he'd hoped for. But as they approached the tall towers of the citadel, Bran began to feel it, like a pressure in the air, like something was watching him again. Sam met them at the gates. He looked older, a bit heavier, with more grey in his beard, but his eyes were the same, nervous, too smart for his own good. Inside, Sam led Bran through candle-lit halls and towers filled with dusty books. He brought him to a small observatory. Charts covered the walls, celestial maps, constellations. "It started 2 moons ago," Sam said. "The stars shifted, just slightly, enough that we thought it was a calculation error." "But it's not?" Bran asked. "No," Sam said. "It's like they're remembering another sky." Bran frowned. "Like another timeline." Sam nodded. "You stopped the Night King, you unmade him, but time didn't just forget. It cracked. You built something new, but the old reality, it didn't fully die. It's leaking back." Bran looked up at the night sky through the tall glass dome. The stars twinkled like normal, but now that Sam said it, something did feel off. One of the constellations was tilted, slightly wrong. "You were the anchor," Sam continued. "The reason that new timeline held together. But if you're here and the Raven is gone, maybe the balance is breaking." They spent the night looking. Through books, Sam pulled out scrolls from old Valyrian seers, writings about time wounds, tears in reality, gaps where old events tried to force themselves back into the present. Most of them were dismissed as myths, but Bran had lived those myths, and by morning he saw it with his own eyes. A girl from the kitchen screamed. They rushed down and found her outside crying, pointing at the sea. It was frozen, all the way to the horizon, ships stuck in place, fishermen shouting, and in the ice, shadows, human shapes, pale and still, lying beneath the surface. Bran rolled forward slowly, squinting. He saw one clearly, a white walker, trapped in the ice. Dead, but not from this world. Sam backed away. "It's starting." "What is?" Bran asked. "The bleed," Sam whispered. "The dead from the old timeline are slipping into this one." That night, Bran sat alone in the observatory. He stared at the stars again. And suddenly, he heard it, a voice. Not from outside, not in the room, in the air around him, like a whisper that came from nowhere. "You thought I was gone." Bran's heart stopped. The voice was cold, familiar. "You broke time to erase me, but I am part of time now." Bran looked around, but nothing moved. No shadow, no wind, just the voice. "You didn't kill me, Bran Stark. You just gave me more. Places to hide." And just like that, Bran understood. The Night King hadn't been unmade. He had become part of the timeline itself, part of the cracks, the bleed. The cold slipping into the new world wasn't just a leftover memory. It was him. Still alive in the pieces of time Bran had shattered. Bran knew what had to be done. He couldn't run anymore. He couldn't hide in new versions of the past. He would have to go back, again, and face the Night King, not in battle, not with swords or fire, but inside time itself, where no army could help, where no one could follow, where it all began, and where it would all end. The next morning, Old Town was under a strange silence. Not just the kind that comes before a storm, but the kind that feels like the world itself is holding its breath. The sea was still frozen, and the shadows under the ice hadn't moved. But that didn't bring peace. It brought fear. Sam sat across from Bran, holding a cup of tea with trembling hands. "We thought it was over," he said quietly. "We thought you fixed everything." Bran nodded. "I did, but I fixed it by bending. Time, that means time is still broken." Sam looked down at his books. "So what do we do now?" Bran didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked out the window at the sky. That small shift in the stars, just a slight curve in a constellation, was growing. A second moon had appeared in one of Sam's maps, only visible through certain lenses. The timeline they were living in was stable on the surface, but beneath it, chaos was stirring. "I have to go back in," Bran finally said. "Deeper than before." Sam's eyes widened. "You don't even have the Raven's power anymore." "I don't need the power," Bran said. "I'm part of the wound now. I've crossed the boundary too many times. I am one of the cracks." Sam stood, nervous. "But what does that mean? Where will you go?" Bran wheeled himself toward the door, where it all ends, or where it all begins. Depends how you look at it. That night he returned to the Rookery Tower, the highest point in Old Town. Not a weirwood, but it didn't matter now. He didn't need the tree anymore. Time had been weakened enough. All he needed to do was focus. So, in the cold wind, under the broken stars, Bran closed his eyes and fell. Not physically, but through time itself. No images this time. No visions, just falling, through ice, through fire, through screams and silence and stars colliding. He kept falling until the world had no shape, until even memories didn't know where they belonged. Then he landed. He stood on an endless plain. The sky was neither day nor night, just grey with no sun, no moon. Wind blew in all directions at once. There was no sound, no people, just emptiness. And then, footsteps crunching snow. Bran turned. He saw him, the Night King, but not as the icy creature from the battlefield. No armor, no crown, just a man. Tall, pale, blue eyes glowing, he was waiting. "You shouldn't be here," the Night King said. "This place doesn't belong to anyone," Bran replied. The Night King smiled faintly. "It does now. It belongs to me. You made it, remember?" Bran looked around. "This is the space between timelines, a void that wasn't supposed to exist. And yet it does," the Night King said, stepping closer. "Because you were afraid of fate. You ran from it, changed it, played with time like it was clay." Bran's voice was steady. "You were going to destroy the world. And now," the Night King said calmly, "I am the world." He raised his hand. All around them, shadows began to rise from the ground. Not wights, not walkers, echoes. Versions of people Bran had seen before, dead in one timeline, alive in another. Arya with white eyes, Robb bleeding at the twins, Daenerys surrounded by ash, Jon Snow lying in a pool of blood at Castle Black. "Your broken time," the Night King said. "Your puzzle." Bran took a breath. "Then let's end it." He stepped forward, and the wind roared around them. The echoes rushed Bran, surrounding him, but they didn't attack. They whispered, not words, but timelines, possibilities, futures Bran could have chosen, futures he had chosen. He closed his eyes and listened. The wind slowed, the shadows faded, and Bran found himself standing alone with the Night King again. But this time, he wasn't powerless. He had learned something in the silence. "The more I ran," Bran said slowly, "the more you grew." "Yes," the Night King said, "because you feed me. Every twist in time gave me strength. Every change gave me space to slip through." "Then I'll stop changing," Bran said. The Night King laughed softly. "It's too late." Bran looked him dead in the eye. "Not if I reset everything, not if I erase both of us." The Night King stopped smiling. "You wouldn't," he said. Bran stepped forward. "I would. Because peace isn't found by fixing the past. It's found by accepting it." And then Bran reached out, touched the Night King's chest. Suddenly, Light exploded from the ground, not fire, not ice, memory. Every timeline, every branch, every version of history that Bran had twisted began pouring out in waves. The death of Ned Stark, the fall of the Wall, the Red Wedding, the rise of Daenerys, the fall of Cersei, Jon's betrayal, Arya's journey, Tyrion's trial, Sam's discovery, the Battle of Winterfell. All of it, rushing out, erasing the void. And the Night King screamed, not like a man, like a timeline being erased. Bran fell again, one last time, falling through everything, until finally he opened his eyes, and he was nowhere, no body, no time, no place, but he was still Bran, still aware, floating in the quiet of nothing, because to fix time, he had to remove himself from it. He had become the crack, and to seal it, he had to disappear. The world woke up, but it didn't know anything had changed. Winterfell stood tall under clear skies. The snow had stopped falling days ago, and the wind that once carried whispers now only carried the scent of pine and smoke from nearby chimneys. Everything was still, everything was calm, and Bran Stark was gone. But no one remembered that he was ever more than just a quiet boy in a chair. Sansa was Lady of Winterfell, strong, thoughtful, respected. She walked through the halls as she always did, giving orders, keeping the north running. But something about her steps felt lighter, as if an old worry had lifted off her shoulders long ago, and she'd forgotten what it was. Arya was somewhere beyond the seas, a name in stories now. The girl who went west, divined what lay beyond the edge of the map. Some said she never came back. Some said she sailed into a storm and vanished. But no one really knew. Jon Snow was still in the north. He hadn't taken the black again, not in this timeline. He lived alone in a small outpost near the mountains, near Ghost and the wild trees. He didn't remember dying, didn't remember coming back. He remembered the wars, yes, but not how many there had been. Just that peace had finally come. In King's Landing, Queen Daenerys Targaryen ruled a smaller, calmer kingdom. The city had never burned. The Red Keep still stood. The bells had never rung. Her dragon, Drogon, circled the sky less often now, sleeping more and roaring less. Tyrion was still her hand, and for once he looked like he wasn't carrying the weight of the world. He made jokes again, real ones, even smiled at them. Samwell. Tarly, now fully robed in Archmeister's chains, sat in a quiet study room at the Citadel. He had no memory of Bran coming to Old Town, no memory of frozen seas or whispering stars. But sometimes, late at night, he would stare at the constellations and pause, like something was tugging at the back of his mind, something missing, but he could never quite name it. One day Sam pulled out an old dusty book he couldn't remember shelving. It had no title, no author, just a symbol on the cover, a tree with eyes. He flipped it open. Blank pages, all except one. It said, "Time is not a line, it is a loop, and someone must always hold the knot." Sam stared at the page for a long while, then closed the book. Somewhere in the land of the living, a boy named Bran had never become the three-eyed raven, never fell into a past deeper than his own. He lived and died quietly, remembered fondly, as a gentle soul who watched the world with silent wonder. But in the space outside time, Bran still existed, not alive, not dead, just there, holding the knot. He wasn't in pain. He wasn't sad. He wasn't happy either. He just was. Memories moved around him like stars, timelines curled like threads, some bright, some dim, some full of fire and dragons, others quiet and green, and slow. He saw all of them but never touched again, because touching meant changing, and changing meant breaking. So he held them, still, eternal. The Night King was gone. For good this time. Not erased, not hidden, just ended. The wound in time had closed, and Bran was the stitch, but the world didn't worship him, didn't sing his name, didn't build statues, because they never knew. Only one person ever came close to remembering Mira Reed. She had returned to her family lands long ago. Her brother Jojen, her father Howland, they were long gone. She lived quietly, farming, walking, the woods, watching the trees, but one day she found a raven with 3 eyes. It sat on a branch, unmoving, watching her. She froze, stared back, and for just a second she remembered the cave, the cold, the journey, the boy in the chair, the war against the dead. Then the memory slipped away again, like a dream. You forget the second you blink, but she whispered anyway. "Thank you, Bran." The raven blinked, then flew off, and Mira smiled. She didn't know why, but her heart felt full. Years passed, not the kind you count in battles or winters, but the quiet years. The kind where people forget there was ever a world filled with ice demons and flaming swords, where kings came and went, wars were smaller, peace held stronger, but time, even when mended, is never perfect. Somewhere deep in the north, past the last hearth, beyond the scattered trees where no path remained, a boy was born. Nothing special about him at first. Just another child from a small family of trappers. Pale skin, black hair, quiet, observant eyes. But when he turned 7, things changed. He started dreaming of snow that screamed, of men with no eyes, of a throne made of twisting roots instead of swords, of a boy in a chair who spoke without moving his mouth. And every night, the dreams grew stronger. His mother would find him standing in the middle of the frozen woods, barefoot in the snow, staring at nothing, not crying, not shaking, just watching. "He says he's listening," she whispered to the village. "Elder, listening to who?" the old man asked. The mother looked down. "He doesn't say." The boy's name was Lorik, and by the time he turned 10, he could speak tongues no one taught him. Words from old Valyria, the first men, even the strange whispers of the children of the forest. He was still a child, still played, laughed, cried. But when the moon was full, and the wind blew just right, he would stop and stare at the stars, and sometimes they blinked back. Samwell Tarly, now High Archmaester, heard rumors, stories from the north about a boy who spoke like a 1,000-year-old ghost, a boy who said things like "Time remembers, time wants him back." It sent a chill down Sam's spine, because the last time he'd heard talk like that, he'd nearly forgotten who he was for weeks. That strange book, the one with no pages but one, he'd locked it away, but it kept reappearing. On his desk, in his satchel, even once on his pillow. No matter how many times he burned it, it always came back, and each time the single page had a new message. The knot weakens, the watcher stirs, the boy dreams. Sam didn't tell anyone, not even Jilly, but he began writing again. Notes, theories, drawings of constellations, sketches of ravens and trees and old maps, because deep down, in a part of him that refused to die, he knew something was slipping loose. In the far north, Lorik stopped eating, not out of sickness, but because he said he didn't need to anymore. "I'm full of stories now," he told his mother, and then one morning he woke up and told her he had to go. "Go where?" she asked. "To the tree," he replied. "The one with the face. There's no tree like that out here. There was, before time forgot it, and just like that the boy disappeared. No tracks, no scent, no trace. Gone, but not lost. Because in the old places, the dead places, the cold places, footsteps began to echo again, first small, then louder, and in one ruined castle, long swallowed by ice, a single fire, relit after years of darkness, not built by hands, but by memory. Bran had fixed time, but time didn't want to stay fixed, because something had learned from him, and now something else wanted in. Back in Old Town, Sam received one. Final letter before the raven turned to ash in his hands. The message read, "He dreams in knots, but others dream in blades." Sam dropped the note, turned to his maps, and finally did something he thought he'd never do again. He packed a bag, sharpened a blade, and sent for Jon Snow. Because if time was coming undone again, there were only a few left who might remember what had once been. Broken even if they didn't know why. The wind in the north carried whispers again. They weren't the whispers of people. They were older than that. They came from the trees, from the roots, from the shadows beneath the snow, and they spoke one name over and over, Bran, but Bran Stark was gone, vanished into the fold between timelines. He had sealed the knot. He had become the stitch that held the world together. So, why was the world pulling at the thread again? Jon Snow stood at the edge of the north, beside Samwell Tarly. The wind cut sharp, but neither of them moved. They were older now. Jon's beard was thick, streaked with grey. Sam had lost weight. Hands calloused from years of work and worry, Jon stared at the old, rotted weirwood before them. Its red leaves had long since fallen, its face had faded, but something about it still pulsed with memory. "He's in there?" Jon asked. Sam nodded. "Or something is. Bran's not alive. Not really. But his mark's still buried in time, and someone's calling to it." Jon turned to him. "That boy?" "Lorik," Sam said. "He vanished into the old woods, and now strange things have started happening again. Fires that don't burn, shadows that don't belong. Voices whispering to children in their sleep." Jon narrowed his eyes. "Sounds like the old war. And coming back," Sam sighed. "Maybe it never left. They ventured deeper into the woods. The sun barely touched this place anymore. It was always dusk here, always quiet. And after 2 days of travel, they found it, a circle of standing stones, and in the middle, Lorik. Eyes closed, standing barefoot in the snow, not shivering, not blinking, just listening." Jon stepped forward slowly. "Lorik?" The boy didn't move. Sam circled the stones. The air felt heavy, sticky, like time itself had thickened. And then Lorik opened his eyes. They were blue, but not the cold blue of the Night King. This was deeper, like two mirrors showing endless versions of the same. A moment, he smiled faintly. "I know you," he said to Jon. Jon stared. "You know of me." "No," Lorik replied. "I know you. I've lived you, died as you, walked as you, in other timelines, in dreams Bran left behind." Sam flinched. "What are you?" Lorik looked at him. "I'm not him, but I'm from him. A spark that slipped through when the knot was tied. A thought, a memory, a backup." Jon stepped forward. "What do you want?" Lorik looked to the sky. "Balance. The knot is weakening again. Not because of me, but because of time itself. It doesn't like being rewritten. Bran patched it, but he didn't repair it." "So what now?" Jon asked. Lorik stepped to the center of the stones. "I have to take his place." Sam froze. "No, you don't understand," Lorik said. "Bran held the knot. But he didn't become time, he stayed himself. That was his mistake. He stayed human." "And you?" Jon asked. Lorik smiled sadly. "I'm not human anymore. I'm what's left when you erase too much and leave something behind." The wind picked up. The ground trembled. The trees groaned like old bones cracking, and above them the stars began to shift again. One by one, they turned red. "You see that?" Sam whispered. "That's the start of a breach." Jon reached for his sword. "Can we stop it?" Lorik looked at him. "Only if I go willingly. No war, no magic, just trade places, become the knot fully, forever." Jon looked at the boy, barefoot, calm, 10 years old. "You're just a child," Jon said. Lorik's voice deepened for a moment. "So was Bran once." There was a silence, long, cold, heavy. Sam closed his eyes. Will anyone remember you? No, Lorik said. That's the point. If they remember, they might come looking, and time won't survive another rescue. The wind circled around them now, faster. The stars pulsed. The stones began to hum. Lorik stepped into the center. I'm ready, he said. John stepped forward, grabbed his shoulder. You sure? Lorik nodded. This time it has to hold, and with that, he closed his eyes. The ground lit up, a flash of pale gold, then white, a scream, but not of pain, of memory, and then silence. The stars stilled, the wind vanished, the trees stopped moving. Sam blinked, John looked around. The stones were empty, Lorik was gone, but this time it felt different. No echo, no bleed, no cold left behind. Just stillness, like a wound had finally been stitched shut. For good. They stood there, for a long while. Then Sam spoke. We won't remember this tomorrow. John nodded slowly. I know. And he was right. By the next morning they woke in separate places, John back at his cabin, Sam in the citadel. Neither remembered the boy, or the forest, or Bran. But for the first time in centuries, time didn't move. Like a broken river, it flowed like it was supposed to, and somewhere deep beyond the stars, in a place with no names or faces, a small boy sat beneath a tree that had no leaves, watching a sky full of threads, holding the knot. Still, forever.